Good morning, everyone. Morning vlog number 3. We are still rolling on this. How about it? I'm getting ready to leave my house right now to head to work. What I wanted to talk about today is limitations. I was watching a Clint Eastwood movie the other day, and I think it was right before it was one of the Dirty Harry movies or something like that. I'm not sure. But he looked at the guy, I think he was about to kill him, and said, a man's got to know his limitations. Now, this is important. This is important. Limitations. It's good to know what you're limited by. So for me, it's my height and my range. But that limitation is also a benefit and not a hindrance. I don't see it as. Because in my field, I can fit in tighter spots than a lot of guys that are bigger than me. And it's not uncomfortable. It's not a problem. Another one of my limitations is that sometimes I'm not the oldest plumber around the company, right? So I don't have the most tenure out of everybody else. What do we do in these situations that makes us better? We have to understand our limitations, right? We have to understand what we can't do sometimes to fully understand ourselves, right? But the important key is if you have a limitation that can be mitigated by education, strength building, physically, mentally. If you have a limitation in life, right? Something that's holding you back from something, but you can achieve and make that limitation a strength and be able to get better at whatever that is that you're doing, that shows resiliency and that makes you better as a whole. I apologize for the shakiness of the camera. I'm driving, obviously. But that's kind of where I wanted to take this video today, is understanding your limitations, but understanding your limitations can become a strength. Because understanding your limitations is 90% of the battle. Learning how to overcome those limitations is what makes you strong. For example, I had a job I went to the other day where it was in an area where the inspector is notoriously difficult to deal with, okay? Not just the fact that he's a stickler, but because he's a stickler and he is very rude. He is very, it's not even to the point that he's rude about being to the point, because I can deal with that. It's to the point where this inspector has said on occasions, and I was in the room when he said it, that if this was one of my guys, I would have passed it. Now, that right there should be a legal matter that should be dealt with, but at the time, you don't have the ability to handle that, right? You don't have the ability to deal with that. So what I did in this scenario, because it was going to require a bigger than normal job, a very big job, right? It was going to require a job that requires the utmost delicate investigation to give the proper solution to the homeowner. So what I did was I found a senior technician who has one of the most experienced plumbers that I know, and I said, would you like to come handle this? What I wanted to get out of it was I wanted him to show me how he would go about doing this. That way I can be better. Unfortunately, that was not granted to me. That was not a part of it. So what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll pick his brain on how he set up the estimate and how he worked upon getting them a solution. That's the best that I can do at that point, because I wasn't there. Now, that's just one limitation that I had in that scenario. But that limitation I want to be a strength. I want to go find this technician that bid the job and see if he was successful in giving a proper solution, see what his process was, see how he went upon doing it. Because for the most part at our company, we all have a very similar process in how we diagnose problems. We go from the point of which the homeowner, the way I do it is I go to where the homeowner tells me they're having a problem. But I have a set of questions in my head for every different problem that I may come across. Like, is this happening when you do this? How long has this been happening? How long have you owned the house? How old is the house? And it just continuously builds information about the situation at hand, right? And that's how I start to really dive into what we can do to fix this. The other thing I like to ask homeowners a lot too, and they could lie to you, they could tell you that no, they're gonna leave in the next few months. But 90% of the time, the homeowner's honest with me. And if a homeowner says they're gonna be there for the foreseeable future, then we start talking about the bigger jobs and the bigger solutions, like more of a permanent solution rather than just a quick fix to fix your problem. But by all means, if you're not expecting to live there for more than 5 more years and you're, actively looking to move, then there's no purpose sometimes in doing the big job. Now, will I leave the estimate for them to do the big job? Of course I will. And I will explain the benefits to each one. I will also explain the limitations to each one. That's important too. Knowing your limitations on job sites, knowing your limitations at work is key. But also knowing your limitations just in general in life is even more key. Because if you don't find out what your limitations are, you'll never know who you are as a person. Does that make sense? You'll never understand who you are as a person and what you can do better to get better at life, right? It's going to be the hardest struggle we deal with throughout our lives, is just going through life and all the trials and tribulations that we see every day. Another one of my limitations is the fact that I don't own a home. I have an apartment, and I have a child and a wife, and I need to make sure, and that's what I've worked on, is saving up my money. However, there's a lot of back and forth on this, is that part of me wants to move out of the state. I'm not a big fan of Illinois. I'm just not. I don't like the taxes. I don't like some of the exuberant laws that are set forth by this state. I don't like the way that certain things are handled, but can I control those things? No, I can't. But I can control my location. If I wish to move, then I move. However, the problem with just moving is there's a lot of problems with that. You have to have a job set up, number one. That's going to be number one. Before you even start looking at houses in an area, you really need to see if there's work in that area and what the average income for your specialty is in that area, right? You don't just jump the ship and go live somewhere else that you've never lived before without researching that area fully, okay? Like knowing the crime rate, knowing the schools, knowing, the community, how a normal everyday life gets carried out in that area. And that's knowing your limitations, because the limitation here is I don't have dispensable funds, just millions of dollars laying in a bank account somewhere. So I have to make sure that where I move is suitable for me, and it's suitable for my family. And you also have to think about this. If you're moving far away, are you very centered in your family? So like, for instance, my mom, my dad, my sister, I'm very close with those 3 people, right? My son's very close with his Pa and Gigi and TT. We're all very close with my family. So that makes it hard, because now I have to my bubble where I want to move to shrinks, right? I can't just move to, 1,000 miles away, because Pa, Gigi, TT, and Abel will never see each other. And I also got to think about her family, her dad, her grandma, right? And we want to stay close for them as well. So that's just how this kind of rolls. There's a lot that goes into this, guys. There's a lot that goes into life in general, and you got to know your limitations. That is what I leave you with today. I just pulled into work. You guys have a great day out there. Be successful, know your limitations, and make those limitations a strength.